we still have a lot of good opportunities, and businesses and young people would be able to prosper by seizing these opportunities. With this remark, I urge members to support the motion. The third session ends. We now enter the fourth one.
Members who wish to speak in this session, please click on the raise hand feature of Zoom. Then staff will jot down your names. The debate themes in this session include continuously improving people's livelihood, nurturing talent, and youth development. The policy areas in this session have been set out on this page for members' easy reference. Mr. Leung Chi-wing. Thank you, President. Human resource is an important asset for all nations and regions. The quest for talent is a top strategy. All the governments are thinking hard about how to retrain and retain our talents, and SAR is no exception. The FTU shall urge the government to launch targeting measures and come with a long-term strategy on human resource development, including developing a effective and lifelong learning culture besides conventional learning, and put more emphasis on the VPET to allow a dual track of working and learning. Education and society are inseparable. The government should not let different policy bureaus to address the problem with poor work division and work portfolios. Need to amalgamate and split it for different work portfolios so that there will be a match between labor and vacancies. In 1997, we removed the stigma of the vocational school and we launched a new secondary curriculum in 2007. It's time to review under the new normal to put more focus on training technical education by providing multiple pathways and providing different kind of career opportunities. Currently, most the universities provided as academic training. We need to build vocational and applied technology universities so that the new generation can take part in GBA development. The FTU have been criticizing the government lacked a long-term HR planning, failed to encourage a VPT education, which led to a human labor mismatch. There insufficient supporting infrastructure by putting too much resource into retraining and fail to address the training of vocational projects. You should start in secondary schools, vocational training, as that will be the future pathways for our young people, which will help people to achieve a satisfaction and security. This policy address had very little mention of the VPET, only mentioned about promoting applied learning, no direction and no target and no vision. I'm disappointed by the lack of commitment to young people. Looking for the mainland VPET infrastructure is, in some European countries, all professions are treated fairly, and this is something our education officials should learn. And for the 14th Five-Year Plan and the 2035 vision objectives, put the investment in the HR and top priority and promise to train those with advanced skills. The government should come with the HR policy and align with that of the central government. In the past, the government has ignored an HR planning, even though we have the HRPC. However, it's just a consultative body without the power and the resource to formulate policies. And we need to speed up the HR ambit under LW, and we need to sign a joint portfolio with the Education Bureau to enhance a data research capability. We can come up with a comprehensive HR policy so as we can provide a talent in the finance industry, arts and cultures, and all other key strategic industry. In the future, the infrastructure project in the northern metropolis, we need all kinds of talent. We need to come up with the sound education HR policy so that the young people can earn a decent livelihood and allow them to support the government and to become true patriots. And next, the policy just mentioned improving people's livelihood. I hope that the government can listen to the FTU. But the next round of the anti-epidemic fund, for those who cannot get the government subsidy, you need to come up with remedy measures. You need to gauge the public sentiment in order to improve the livelihood. I support the motion of thanks I shall submit. Reverend Canon Kuhn. On this session, I would like to talk about poverty alleviation and elderly services. Hong Kong poverty problem has long been criticized, including the past CEs mentioned that the wealth gap and poverty alleviation is one of the top priorities. The latest statistics reveal that before policy intervention, the poor population reaches 1.653 million people. Poverty rate at around 23.6%. So 1 in every 4 people is considered poor. And for the elderly, even though the government has launched and enhanced the old age living allowances, however, the elderly poverty rate after intervention has now been stabilized. However, the overall picture is still severe. In 2020, the elderly population was 1.3 million, at about 1/5 of total population. Before policy intervention, the 65-plus poverty rate was at 45%, which was astounding. Even with policy intervention in 2017, the elderly poverty rate was still at 14.5%. Taking into account the recurring cash benefits and policy intervention, there's still 15% of seniors living below the poverty line and twice the total population double. This illustrates the Hong Kong government's poverty alleviation mishaps to focus on cash handouts and allowances, which actually widen our poverty gap. The poor population actually grown in time and become poor despite alleviation. The poverty line calculation adopted a relative poverty but not absolute poverty. Thus, the number of poor people will be affected by demographic infrastructure, income levels. And statistically, you can always argue that someone has dropped below the poverty line. And therefore, you can never stop the poverty alleviation. The government poverty line failed to show the true state of Hong Kong's poverty, and the policy could not be targeted for those in need. And all the policy must be grounded with means and objectives. We rarely see the government come up with a poverty alleviation target or has an annual target for poverty reduction. The government can review the poverty line population or by adopting the mainland standards of absolute poverty and conduct regular adjustments. Only through this method could help the government to get set its anti-poverty target and come with the roadmap, and also to offer a tiered assistance to the poor. In the annual Hong Kong Poverty Report, the government claims concern or attach great importance to the Hong Kong poverty picture. Over the years, the government only launched remedial measures that could not address structural poverty and failed to assess the impact of the various public policies on the wealth distribution. For example, population policy, labor, housing, and taxation policies. Against the backdrop of the epidemic, the economy has taken a toll. The closures and layoffs. A lot of the grassroots are facing unemployment. I hope that for the upcoming budget, more targeted measures can be launched on a holistic manner to address Hong Kong poverty. President, I shall submit and support this motion of thanks. Dr. Wang Yunshan. Well, the CEO mentioned that under the new era, we need to provide new impetus on the economy. I would like to speak on IT. The government has designated River Loop as the new Shatin Technopole. Well, to break new ground, we need to work with the mainland to come up with institutional breakthrough. Well, Hong Kong's come across many problems. Commercialization of IT outcome. We have a small market, and we do not have a complete value chain. The government shall work with the mainland instead of claiming that we need to have cooperation on every part of the value chain. After launching the ODP outline plan, a lot of the GBA cities provided a lot of the pro Hong Kong policy to help to promote market access and preventing the flow of production factors, or allowing the research funding to come into Hong Kong. The government should be aware of the Hong Kong structural problems and seize the opportunity to work with the mainland and seek deeper and broader breakthroughs. For example, Hong Kong companies are still affected by the negative list and cannot invest in certain advanced industry, for example, stem cells and genetic therapy. And the difficulty of Hong Kong companies to get patents and as well the registration of the Food and Drug Administration of China is rather complicated. Well, for example, the River Loop centric for Hong Kong Shenzhen interactive circle should become the pilot for cooperation. I know that in the last September, the meeting will come with the cooperation arrangements and issue a joint policy pack. This joint policy pack reiterate existing measures with a lack of institutional novelties. I cited four proposals. First, the government would consider asking the central authorities to allow the River Loop companies to enter the China market directly. Second, to let the China IP agency to set up presence in the River Loop and to recognize a Hong Kong approved patents to be applied to the GBA. Three, and for the IP agency to provide a shortcut so that they would approve the IP applications. And four, Shenzhen should collect data so that can be applied in the River Park. With all this kind of breakthrough, I hope that the River Loop can become the trial cooperation value chain for original clinical testing. Can you please stop? Ms. Jovi Chan. Thank you, President. On behalf of the FTU, I would like to talk about the youth policy. I will talk about youth employment. President, besides being a GC elected member, I'm also a member of the China Youth Federation. I hope that in this term I can help to advocate for the youth so that we can introduce and execute youth policy. As the youngest member of LegCo, I am glad to have the public trust and hope that we can construct a society bound with opportunities for people to participate in politics so that the people are willing to become the establishment. President, I suggest that this term the government should review the youth member self-recommendation scheme. Currently, under this scheme, each committee only provided 2 places. And for the self-recommendation scheme, an average receive over 5,000 applications. The quotas available are nowhere enough, and the young people could not feel the government's encouragement and willing to listen to them. Well, the government should review and expand the number of self-nominated members so that the young people can have more opportunities to enter the government mechanism and bring their voice in there. Besides going to establishment, hope the young people can be integrated within the national economic development. I know that in last September, with the support of central governments, there are new 8 measures benefiting Hong Kong. However, the government did not promote it at the community level. Hope that we can improve it for the next term. I would like to thank the electrical colleagues and the Home Affairs panel who support me to support the committee on the youth development and the solution that will be considered in the House Committee, so as to raise our focus on youth development. And I shall work with the other electrical members on how to gain solidarity to do the youth work. There's a better tomorrow for the young people. If young people have hope, then Hong Kong will have hope. In this term, let's go. Let's work together to create hope for the young people. On behalf of the FTE, I have advice on the youth policy coming up. Mr. Michael Lok will talk about technology, and Mr. Bill Tang will talk about poverty alleviation. And Mr. Leung Chi-wing has talked about human resource and training and outlined the FTU's position. I hope that we can achieve good government administration to bring hope to the young people. I so submit. Mr. Luk Chung-ho.
Thank you, President. In this part, I will be talking about smart city, the transport, and energy. The government has announced Smart City 1.2 and 1.0 or 2.0 blueprint, and the country has developed Hong Kong to establish an innovation and technology hub so as to promote cooperation between the academia and business in research and innovation. But can the Hong Kong SAR government done the job properly? If we look at the Leave Home Safe app, it's really a laughing stock. It's just like a very good sports car with good appearance, but the engine is a small one. We are resorting to very primitive means, making telephone calls, inputting data manually to try to trace the source of infection. During the recent outbreak, many people have not been able to respond, and the data cannot be analyzed automatically. I believe the mainland health authorities will be amazed by what they see when they come to Hong Kong. We need to change our mindset in the face of this epidemic, and we should try to catch up in realizing the smart city program. And I would also like to talk about how smart city measures can be utilized by the elderly and other vulnerable groups. People only know that we have to use the Leave Home Safe app. In the future, you have to use it when you enter a shopping center, and you need at least to get one jab, one dose of vaccination. And if you don't have a mobile phone, you have to buy one very quickly. And if you are not yet vaccinated, well, you have to get one, and we have been doing this by reaching out to these people, but many people don't know and how they can scan their vaccination records and also how to set the reminder of the app. And they don't know why their family members' names should be input. And then they have to get the record from another system. So a lot of data input is required before they can get a health code. So these people find this process very cumbersome. Not everyone has the IQ of 160. So using government app presents a lot of problem to them. Although a fun night and workers are doing their best to help answering such questions, and will volunteer to try to equip them with the necessary skill to use the apps. But without government support, we have been facing difficulties. In the mainland, even those elderly people living in the rural villages are embracing IT. Why is it that we are moving very slowly in this regard? And how can we build a solid foundation for achieving the dynamic zero infection objective? Let's not talk about the political side of the matter. In the I'm Smart platform launched by the government in 2020, I think it was done in a haste. Last year, when we had consumption vouchers, people were allowed to submit the applications in paper, but it was very cumbersome. And there are only 185 services covered by I Am Smart app. But the Guangdong has a similar app. The 2,300 services are covered by app, so it's a much better one. So they would like the data to do the errands instead of the person itself doing it. And some people think that this app is better than nothing, but it seems that the traditional methods are easier to use. Why would people? Well, some people would like to use the smart apps, but also using there are other government apps, such as the one using the smart ID card, as well as the one for postal services. Well, they don't know how they can have all these services subsumed under an app, so that they don't have to input the same data time and again for accessing different services. I think we should strengthen this in the future to make sure that these smart apps, including the Home Safe and I'm Smart app, are easy to use. We should try to do some consolidation, and then the department should allow people to use all government-related app services by registering once. And the vaccination permit would just facilitate a partial registration in true name. But we should prevent people from using other people's mobile phones to avoid tracking. So there must be real name, actual registration in real names. And also that we should use auto positioning functions of the mobile phone network, so that the app can be used for the longer term. That's the strongest IT weapon for that objective. President Xi is now asking us to utilize all the resources in doing a good job in the fight against the epidemic. We should learn from the mainland's successful experience, and don't just look back on our past. We should be people-oriented, so that we can really live up to the spirit of a smart city. Let me now turn to transport. It's just like the circulation system for blood circulation. We should have infrastructure-led approach. We have been urging the government to move quickly with Hon Starry LEE. But if you say that the infrastructure can wait because we don't have any population intake before a certain year, then it would not be infrastructure-led. Hon Starry LEE will be completed in 2030, and then some other parts will be 2034, etc. This is too slow. In terms of manpower, there should be proper advanced planning. Don't tell us that you don't have the manpower, therefore you cannot do it. And if the statutory procedure has slowed down the progress, please tell us what rules should be changed. And then LegCo would help the government in changing the rules so that the projects can be launched expeditiously and Hong Kong's development can be quickened. And we should be forward-looking in our development plan so that we can learn from the mainland's experience that when the road is there, riches can be gained. Under the current epidemic, the private sector-led approach is going to present problems. For example, the public transport operators have cut the service frequencies, making it inconvenient to passengers. And it's not good for our fight against the epidemic. A private bus company, of course, cannot just suffer loss and do nothing. So what should we do? I think in the future, for franchise bus operations, the government should provide a certain level of support. All along, the government favors a railway. In other countries, government would provide subsidies to bus operators or would purchase service from bus operators. I think we should do more to meet the shortfall in transport services. And I would like to thank all the drivers who are providing the necessary service for all passengers. They are doing this at considerable health risk. So we should not neglect these drivers working to take passengers. They may be bus drivers or minibus drivers. Their income has suffered because of the epidemic. After the merging of the railway companies, the railway operations have become the dominant force. I hope we can bring in some competition. And I certainly hope that governance can be improved through all these. Mr. Luke, please stop now. Mr. Yang Wing-Kit, the policy address talked about study to railway extension for the North Island and East Kowloon. And for East Kowloon, I would like to suggest that it should start at Po Lam or going to Lok Fu, so that the Wong Tai Sin traffic network can be enhanced, and then the uphill residents can be benefited. After the Three Mile Line, Kowloon City benefits from this, but the design is problematic. The escalator is one way only. I hope the MTRC should provide another escalator for access the platform. I represent Kowloon City. I hope MTRC will respond to us. And the accessibility for all and the uphill, the escalator system are good measures. I hope more can be done to benefit commuters. For Our Lady of Mary North hospitals and in Hong Starry, there should be an escalator linking the hospital and the Chok Yuen North Estate. Chok Yuen North Estate would have to use a staircase with 42 steps, and for Lok Fu Estate residents, they have to use a staircase as well. It's not very convenient for elderly people. I hope there could be a lift linking Chok Yuen Road with Chok Yuen North and near Nok Kong Road. There should be a lift leading to Fu Pei Tong Street. And I hope there should be a lift near Long Chung Road, the Bohemian Pavilion for the benefit of Tin Ma Estate residents when they want to go to Wang Tao Home Estate. I hope the Secretary can improve the transport network of Kowloon Central. Dr. Dick Chi Yuen. Thank you, President. I would have to say once again that the government should not target the poor and cut the subvention by 1% to NGOs. This is not the first time. We have experienced a number of cuts. All the years taken together is 6.5% in reduction, or $450 million. And over the years, a reduction of $10 billion has been cut from the funding. When we introduced the one lump sum grant system, there was an agreement, and the government would refer to the midpoint salary of civil servants in providing the subvention. And now this midpoint value has reduced by 6.5%. This is a violation of the original agreement. We are talking about just $200 million. It's nothing compared with the total budget of the government.
But this can have far-reaching implications. Let's take a fresh grad of social worker. So $200 million will mean 530 months' salary. And then if we were to share that out, then every institution will have to reduce the number of staff by 3 or 4. So that would have far-reaching implications on us. But then you might say that, well, the administration will have to be fair and everybody will have to get the cut. But then what about schools? And also medical institutions, hospitals do not have to do that. So how come only welfare agencies are getting the cut? So would that be fair to us? At the Welfare Services panel last time, I suggested that at the March meeting of the panel, the administration should give us a good explanation. I hope that the LWB can give us an answer at the March regular meeting. In the policy address, many have well, a lot has been touched on improving people's livelihood. But then, well, you might have given us an account on what you have done. It may not mean that you have done the proper things. Taking poverty as an example, as Reverend Kuhn said, well, in 2015 we have 1.34 million poor people, and then by 2020 we're talking about 1.65 million. If we have been able to resolve this problem, then we should have seen a reduction in the population of poor people or people living in poverty. And what about RCHEs? Well, in 2020, that's the figure provided by the administration. Well, for people waiting for care and detention homes, well, in the process of queuing, some 4,800 people passed away. And then in the care and detention homes, we have 2,160 plus elders passed away while they were waiting for a place at the care and detention homes. So every year we're talking about thousands of elders passing away while they were still waiting for a place at the RCHEs. So does that mean we are able to improve our living standard continuously for the disabled? As we know, when they try to wait for an RCHEs or RCHDs, they will have to wait for years. So, Madam Deputy, I hope that the administration will understand that we do commend your efforts, but then it doesn't mean that after taking action is enough. And it doesn't mean that whatever you can, you will try, and it's all. I hope that the new term of government will look into this with a new structure, with a new team of accountability officials, so we can have more commitment. And then what we are asking for is a very simple very simple measurement standards. That's the KPI, so that well, for RCHEs and then for RCHDs, with that KPI, we will really be able to do something about it. These are my remarks. Dr. David Lam. Thank you, Mr. President. This session is on continuously improving people's livelihood, and also we should ride out from the adversity. I'll be focusing on getting out of the adversity. First, on vaccination. A couple of days ago, we already said that as far as the elders are concerned, the initial resolution is for the administration or the HA to work with some medical institutes so that they can provide outreaching teams to these RCHEs. We hope to be able to complete the vaccination process before the end of March. But then for children, we haven't really started that with a sizable operation. You are working with private doctors, but then since schools are still closed, the process has been slowed down. And we have also talked to the DFH because many doctors and nurses would like to help. And therefore, in the process, we hope that arrangements can be arranged for students to go back to the schools to take the jab. But then the actual arrangements have been rather cumbersome because the DFH requires a lot of documentation. If a private doctor doesn't have a clinic, for example, he might be an anesthetist and he might be working in the public sector. Well, even though he's very familiar with giving jabs, and also for the disposal of used needles and so on. And what about having PCs on desktops? What should they do with the vaccination arrangements? So we should really relax all the regulations so that we can really go into the schools to help with the vaccination for students. And also, during this very short period of time, the administration has managed to identify 2 housing estates, and hotels have also been used for community vaccination, for community quarantine purposes. But then, supposedly, it's going to be run by private contractors. I don't think that's desirable because earlier on, Penny Bay was under the care of the DFH, but then Penny Bay is going to be turned into an isolation center, and the DFH will be withdrawing. So there should be manpower from the DFH to at least coordinate these isolation facilities. And I can also help get private doctors and nurses to go there to work. But then when it comes to operation, because after all, as members of the public, how can they accept that such an isolation facility is not under the care or operation of the DFH? I hope that that can be coordinated by the DFH. I can get people to help out. I'm sure many people will be willing to help. Next, I'd like to turn to what's going to happen under the epidemic. Many people would like to get a remote consultation so that they can get the advice of a Western doctor or TCM practitioner. I think TCM practitioners have been doing that, and they've been doing such a service, and they can also courier the drugs to the patients. So I'm referring to the Western doctors. But then what about TCM practitioners? According to the rules and regulations, you will have to establish a patient-doctor relationship before you can provide consultation services via the phone, even if they are just asking very simple questions. And therefore, given the very exceptional circumstances, please, Medical Council can consider relaxing the rule. And earlier on, we also note that A&E department are having a hard time because many people are waiting there for consultation and treatment and testing and so on, and they have limited manpower. As I said, hundreds of private doctors are willing to help out at public hospitals. And yet we will have to bear this in mind, that it's not just about manpower situation. In some districts, there are also more RCHEs and also RCHDs. And therefore, once there is an outbreak in the RCHEs, they will need a lot of people. And a lot of people will be involved. Over 100 patients might be involved. And if they go to the A&E department, then it will overload the A&E department. For those staying home or in RCHEs, it's not the most dangerous places. But then if you're waiting outside the A&E department, it will be very risky. And some people have suggested that they can send out outreaching teams to the institutions or RCHEs so that they can also take care of the elderly patients there. So if that is the case, then for RCHEs, if there is an outbreak, then the HA, the infection control people can also go to the RCHE to help them with isolating the infected so that they would be isolated from the uninfected. And medical teams can also be sent to the RCHEs to set up medical command posts so that they can help the patients there and then, and they can also dispense the drugs. Just imagine, at an RCHE, we can provide consultation, care, and dispensing of drugs, and so on. So other than X-rays, most of the others can be done there. So we will have to change our mindset instead of just getting the patients to the hospitals before treatment can be offered. So please do consider that. Other than changing our mindset, another thing is the administration has also started this dedicated taxi fleet for transporting infected patients. I think this is a good thing, but then I'm also very concerned about taxi drivers. Have they been given sufficient training on infection control? If they are infected, that would be a big problem, because the patients will be behind the back of the drivers. So if they do not have proper PPE, then that would be very risky. So can the DFH tell us, these taxi drivers have been given some training instead of just giving them guidelines? If that is the case, then that is inadequate. I understand that the DFH and also the CHP have also put out some APIs online so that taxi drivers can also take a look, and then they understand how they are supposed to put on the PPE in order to protect themselves. But then the most important thing is to provide them with actual guidance and instructions, or else once they are infected, it's going to be a big problem. And TCM practitioners have been providing remote consultation service, but then the role played by them has been relatively small so far, and therefore we will have to develop very good integrated Western and Chinese medicine treatment protocols. I suggest that the administration should introduce a new coupon on COVID. Instead of just elders, anybody can use it, so long as they are a confirmed patient. They can use that to go and see a TCM practitioner or a Western doctor, or else if you're in isolation and if you're still waiting for hospitalization, then what is going to happen? You need something to help you, right? All right, in the longer term, we will have to think about long-term medical development. We are talking about a very serious aging population and also people suffering from chronic diseases. We all know that our direction is that the focus of development should be more inclined towards community-based primary health care. And that would mean that everybody will have his medical history, and then everything will go with or follow the patient. And we will also have a coordinated medical or healthcare network so that doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and also the rehabilitation people will also help the patients. So they will all play their own roles. In the community, it's not just about doctors. Of course, strengthening the role played by family doctors is important so that chronic diseases will be treated in the community. And then public hospitals will only be dealing with acute and serious cases. In the past, we've been talking about the public-private sector collaboration or partnership, and family doctors are also having this imbalanced situation. We will have to deal with that. And thirdly, hospitals and the community are not doing things in a balanced manner. Specialists and also family doctors and also hospitals and community would have to have a better interface before we'll be able to provide the services that are needed in a community with an aging population. Also, last but not least, in terms of personnel development, we attach a lot of importance to professional training. For care training, it's not adequate, and therefore we will have to provide more training to the nurses. With these remarks, I support the motion. Next, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, President. Well, if the youth have chances to develop, then the entire country will develop robustly, and therefore we need talents with commitment to our country, and that's the common objective of our community. It's also our responsibilities. After the chaos and also the epidemic, for the younger people, they are now very unsettled, and they are at a loss as to what they are supposed to do, and therefore we will have to redouble our efforts to help them. We will have to be concerned about their mental and physical health, and we will have to offer them development opportunities so they can see a future with a prospect. But then, regrettably, what we are seeing now is that Hong Kong's youth policy in the short term is very fragmented, and there is a lack of long-term vision, and there is also no indicator for review. And for problems faced by the young, we have not been able to resolve those issues. I've been talking about the need for coming up with a long-term youth policy and a development blueprint. We will also have to have a comprehensive youth development indicator so that we'll be able to have interdepartmental collaboration, so that in the process of formulating the policies, we can find out the shortfalls, so that we will be able to implement and complete those targets more effectively with the improved electoral system in place. The administration must expedite its efforts. I believe that the revamped Home Affairs and Youth Bureau will be able to play a role, and the CS is also leading the Youth Commission. It should be restructured so that it's not just giving funding. It should also collaborate and coordinate different bureaus. We should listen to the views of the young people in terms of social mobility and in different areas, so that we'll be able to have a top-down approach when we formulate policies for the youth.
And we should take this opportunity of government reorganization. The government should explore how we can allow young people to participate in political discussions and political participation in the community. And in the past few years, over 6,800 of applications have been received under the recommendation scheme, but only a few hundreds have joined the government, and there's still thousands of young people who are minded to serve the community, but don't have the opportunity. Perhaps the government can appoint them to different advisory committees like Fight Crime Committee, Fire Safety Committee, so that they can take part in community building. Now, the ultimate goal of these suggestions is to promote our mobility of our young people. There are various business opportunities in the GBA, so young people can have more chances of upward mobility there. But the way we promote our young people, the GBA, are we doing it most effectively? Now, Hong Kong is already part of the GBA. When we publicize GBA, don't use the word go to GBA. So the people think that Hong Kong and GBA are separate. And we should set up supporting networks with cities in GBA, so that we can have a safety net for young people minded to develop in the mainland. And perhaps our publicity strategy is wrong. There are tremendous opportunities in GBA, but young people may think that no matter how big the GDP and population GBA is, that doesn't concern me because I have no intention to start a business there. So we should consider dreams of our young people and what they aspire to do. For instance, young people like to play basketball. Do we know that GBA cities are renowned in basketball? And there are people may want to be PTs for basketballers, and we should tell young people that they can realize their dreams in different cities in GBA. And then after they have learned in GBA, they can come back to serve in Hong Kong, and we should let our young people know that they can develop in the GBA. Then they can go to mainland cities they prefer to realize their dreams and integrate into the development of the country. Another way to learn about GBA is exchange sessions. I think we should have a 1+1 internship scheme. NGOs should invite young people to have some chances of living or working in the GBA, and they can learn about relative weaknesses and strengths of different cities. And exchange programs are supported by the government should be more innovative. For instance, many young people like esports. Can we set up an esports exchange program? Of course, young people need to be equipped if they want to realize their dreams, and this is related to education. Our education system should see how we can enhance the competitiveness of our young people. Universities place too much emphasis on scores and academic performance and admission. We should allow young people who have a flair in arts and sports and culture to receive tertiary education. To develop new emerging industries, we need education. We should promote diversification in our industries before young people can have a future. There may be fintech, and we have the traditional industries in Hong Kong. Schools should take care of the needs of the market as well as the interests of our young people, so that students can also take part in applied learning to enhance the acceptance of applied learning in employment and further education. We need a long-term development plan and blueprint for youth development. I hope that with the establishment of the Bureau, we can expedite our work in this regard, and then we can resolve the difficulties faced by our young people and provide multiple pathways for our young people. They can know where their opportunities lie, and they can contribute to the prosperity and stability of the country. Thank you. Dr. Johnny Ng. Thank you. The see in the new policy address that there should be 4 strategies to improve people's livelihood, training and retraining to encourage growing, enhance social welfare, and also to improve the MPF system. I think these are focused ways to deal with the deep-seated issues of Hong Kong people. I'm most concerned about our young people in this the topic is building a bright future together. So we must make a bigger pie to provide more diversified startup and job opportunities for young people. We should set up platform for our young people to create startups in Hong Kong. We must listen very carefully to their wish so that we can satisfy their needs in education, career, housing, and upward mobility. Digital economy is the focus of the future. We are an international financial center. I'm sure this can provide ample opportunities for young people. The government should provide more resources and policies to nurture our young people. The government should more proactively encourage young people to understand the nation from different perspectives. Presidency want our young people said that we should be the leader and also friend of and inspire of our young people. I think we should understand the central authorities care for young people, and we should encourage our young people to develop in the mainland, and they should grasp the opportunities brought about by the 14th Five-Year Plan and GBA. I'm happy to see that there will be the Northern Metropolis, and I think it's a place for young people. Our young people can then have a platform to realize their dreams. The Northern Metropolis proposes twin cities and 3 circles. The government should use this advantage to build up the loop area, and the Northern Metropolis should interface with the various development between Shenzhen and Hong Kong so that GBA can be an international INT center. The North Metropolis can have an INT center to encourage young people to go there, and overseas companies to set up bases in the Hong Kong Shenzhen Science and Technology Park can be a place for laboratories, product development bases, etc. Then we can have a favorable INT environment. It is INT free port. There should be tax concessions to encourage our young people and overseas experts to have startups and work there. Thank you. With your remarks, I support the motion. Mr. Ju Kwok Keung. Mr. Ju Kwok Keung. Madam Deputy, the government, this term of government has invested another $13 billion in education, the largest of all terms of government. The government has reserved money to improve the manpower of primary, secondary schools and rationalize the salary scales of principal and deputy principal of schools. For various reasons, the proposals were not passed in the last term of council, and this is very disappointing to headmasters and deputy principles. Actually, the proposal has gone through a detailed discussion. It's very reasonable and professional. It can enhance the management and administration of schools, and is most important in attracting talents. I'm grateful to the Secretary of Education for planning to submit the proposals to the Council. I hope that it can be passed very soon. Now, there is a common concern among the education sector that our student population is shrinking. There is nothing on this in the PA. Many schools have done a lot in taking care of students. I hope the Bureau can recognize the hard work and try to maintain diversity in the education sector. As for KGs and childcare centers, we have on many occasions reflected difficulties and challenges faced by the sector to the Bureau. For instance, students dropping out because of the epidemic, and schools face difficulties financially. We do not have a salary scale for KG teachers, and their leave regime is also rather unreasonable. I hope the administration can pay heed to our views and do not use administrative reasons to brush aside our aspirations. I think all our aspirations reflect the views of the sector. The one chapter of the policy addresses on quality education. We have so many KG issues not yet resolved. How can we have quality education? With these remarks, I support the motion. Mr. Tan Kah Pew. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Poverty is among the top priorities to be addressed in Hong Kong. I can agree more with what Reverend Peter Kuhn once said on poverty alleviation. The Poverty Commission has said poverty line and saying that it is indicative in nature and it is not really any target for us. This is a waste of time. Now, I have 3 suggestions. We must work out a feasible poverty alleviation plan ASAP, and we should treat elderly poverty separately, and we should work out their basic needs and satisfy their needs so that they can be lifted out of poverty. As for the working poor, I think there are 2 critical issues. First, we must adjust the statutory minimum wage ASAP. The levels are 4 years behind, and I think we have lagged behind inflation. And then we must revamp after school childcare service to release the women workforce. Thank you. Dr. Wendy Hong, thank you. This part I'd like to talk about my views on INT. To promote development of INT, we must ensure we have a commercialization and production. Now, we have got a lot of R&D outcome because of promotion of R&D. We have R&D outcome which is very competitive in the world, but we can't commercialize them because all along people think that we have leading universities and R&D institutes, and the mainland has got a strong manufacturing base. And so merging the 2 is excellent synergy. As for the Hong Kong Shenzhen INT zone, it is operated on this rationale. Well, I'm not against it, but if the model is so unilateral, then we can only have R&D and no promotion and no production. In fact, R&D activities and commercialization of outcome should be merged so that we can have an industry chain. If we just invest in R&D, it's not necessary that our industries will grow. The outcome of R&D may be sold, but that account for a very small percentage of the value from R&D because we don't have any manufacturing industries in Hong Kong. With no choice but to sell the outcome of R&D, and we cannot reap the full benefits of R&D because manufacturing can bring jobs and can benefit the community. So we must not overlook the importance of manufacturing in GBA and also in the mainland and also in the world. We should encourage anchor companies to come to Hong Kong to absorb and promote R&D and manufacturing.
This will encourage the development of the entire production chain. Of course, we can choose which link along the production chain we engage in. I'm going to submit my proposal to the administration in due course. Now we are in a crisis. Even when the epidemic ends, the previously advantageous industries will be losing their strength. We have to transform our conventional industries. It is the right time to achieve breakthrough and transformation. We should make use of this crisis and transform our industries for integration into the national developments and bring back opportunities to Hong Kong and for Hong Kong people. Thank you. I so submit. Ms. Maggie Chan. Madam Deputy, I'm going to talk about protection of women and children welfare and writing a white paper on women welfare. We cannot allow child abuse tragedies to happen again. We have to take action. The recent incidents about the Hong Kong Society for the Protection of Children shows that our monitoring system has failed. After the 5th wave, we have to promptly legislate for the offense failure to protect. We have to take a comprehensive approach. We can't just have have minor and scattered measures to protect women's welfare. I support drafting a white paper for the protection of women's rights and provide a regular screening for cervical cancer and breast cancer for different for women at different ages. Subsidies should be given to women who are giving the first birth, giving birth to their first child, and also we should set up a clear policy for protection of women's welfare. While we are integrating with national development, women can play an important role. We have an international perspective, and our female citizens are of a high quality. We should encourage them to participate in the promotion of the China and Hong Kong story and become the ambassador of the country and Hong Kong. In setting policy about women, the Hong Kong SAR government has not taken a high perspective. That's why our policies on women lack soul. In terms of supporting families, under the epidemic, some couples are separated across the boundary. Family problems have arisen. We need consolidated counseling and support measures for families. The government can take further steps to provide funding for community organizations which have connections with women in Hong Kong and social workers in the mainland, so that social workers between the two places can follow up on cross-boundary family issues. Finally, we are at the height of the epidemic. I give my heartfelt thanks to the free, complete, and two ensures offered by President Xi. I thank the central government for giving full support to the Hong Kong SAR government for fighting against the epidemic. I urge everyone in Hong Kong to join hands and overcome this wave of epidemic. We can only rely on the country, and we can only follow the direction of the country in fighting this epidemic. We cannot afford to live with COVID. If we are to enjoy sustained prosperity and stability under the one country, two systems principle, we have to follow the national policies. Secretary General Xi's speech gave us hope. When we encounter a problem, we will surely get help from the country. Now, as we have seen from the example of Wuhan, we will definitely overcome this epidemic and enjoy steadfast and long-term stability. Thank you. Ms. Judy Chan. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I declare that I am a non-executive member of the Urban Renewal Authority. I'm happy to see that in the policy address, under the chapter about urban renewal, a study is promised by the URA in terms of renewal of Yau Ma Tei and Mong Kok O districts. A blueprint has been provided, and also there is mentioning about integrating streets and transferring plot ratios. Mong Kok and Yau Ma Tei are not the only districts which require a renewal. For Sham Shui Po and so on, districts on the Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, as well as the new territories, new towns are getting old. We need renewal in order to improve the living quality of our residents. I support this visionary idea. Through public-private partnership, we can speed up the progress of urban renewal of old districts. Now, I hope building owners, the property sector can seize the opportunity to combine the resources and speed up the renewal process and create a win-win scenario so that our residents can live in a better environment. And also the policy address dedicated a major portion on how we can achieve carbon neutrality by year 2050. I totally support that, and I'm happy to see that a new climate change and carbon neutrality office is set up under the Environment Bureau to steer the work and involve the youth. I also hope the government can make good use of the resources like the old park. I know the capacity of old park is huge and it is not fully utilized. The Environment Bureau should enhance our kitchen waste collection scheme and fully utilize the green facility. On child protection, to avoid similar incidents like the Hong Kong Society for the Protection of Children, we have to enhance training for carers. And also, the current service ratio or manning ratio for infants between 0 to 6 years old, the manning ratio is 1 to 6. It is undesirable, and we have to train more carers for young children. More resources should be committed. Given the current situation of the employment market, the government has to come up with ways to attract people with passion to join the childcare sector. If the government can improve its policy on child protection, we can also boost the employment rates for women. I support the motion of thanks and I so submit. Thank you. Professor Sun Dong. Thank you, Madam Deputy. The development of Hong Kong is related to scientific research on the upstream, commercialization at the lower stream. Now about basic infrastructure. We have advanced scientific research infrastructure. We have a connection with the international academic scene, and also we have the edge in terms of commercialization. However, in terms of the influence of our commercialization fruits, we have been surpassed by our neighbors. There are two major reasons that I would like to bring to the government's attention. We don't have a comprehensive ecosystem. There is no synergy between scientific research and commercialization of products. In terms of the influence of our products or the nurturing of scientific research talents, the synergy is non-existent, and also we lack a research fund. The 8 universities under the UGC put together, the funding is just equivalent to that of Tsinghua University. For Tsinghua University, the government has set the target of 1.2% GDP of scientific research. However, it is just 0.98%, much lower than our neighbors. Now, commercialization has always been one of our gap in the production chain. There are two reasons. The first is the policy of universities and assessment. Priority is given to academic research, but not the commercialization. There are lots of restrictions on university employees in commercializing the products, and that's why they are not enthusiastic about it. Now, in terms of assessment and funding, the universities are not giving adequate support for commercialization of products. I've been working in universities for over 10 years, and I'm well aware of the gap, and also the positioning is not clear. For example, in Taiwan, the industry park, the positioning is clear. That is to serve as a bridge between universities and corporations and commercialize the scientific research products of universities. Leaders of the industrial park have been principals or presidents of universities. It certainly helped to commercialize the university's products. Now, third, about developments of the industry, like other members have said, I think developing the scientific research industry is definitely useful for diversifying our economy, providing opportunities to young people, as well as widening our tax base. With I&T industries development, we can improve our scientific research quality, nurture more talent, and it is vital for our status as an international I&T hub. Now, previously, the government was not determined to develop the industry. Before year 2000, the government has considered developing our microchips and microchip industries and so on, but there was no sustained effort. That's why the industry did not come to fruition. Now the government is taking a lying flat attitude. Well, we cannot rely on the conventional principle of a small government and big market. The government has to intervene. And also, we have a lot of unfavorable conditions for reindustrialization. For example, our geographical constraints and the lack of talents. So I have several suggestions to make. First, we should give priority to high value-added industries. It should align with our advantageous industries to provide high value-added services. And we cannot rule out conventional industries like textile. Textile used to be our most important industrial pillar. And it has potential to combine smart production and so on to become a high value-added industry. And also we have to consider the benefits for society. How can we provide more jobs for young people? Thirdly, we have to introduce advanced industries. And more importantly, we have to nurture our own advanced industries and create our own brand. So these are my two cents about how we can develop the industries along the chain, and I support the motion. Thank you.
Mr. Charles Yu Chung. Mr. Charles Yu Chung. Madam Deputy, when this policy address was delivered in October last year, there was an article with the title that you could talk about everything in theory, but execution is what matters. The policy address has taken full advantage of the one country, two systems, and has formulated a visionary blueprint for Hong Kong's development. In particular, the Northern Metropolis is a good example. And then there are also measures to promote further reindustrialization. I welcome all these initiatives. I hope the government will not just be paying lip service, it will actually act to make this happen. Now, if this is the policy, if this policy addresses the election manifesto of the chief executive to rerun for a second term, then the labour sector will not probably support it because there are just over 100 characters on labour policy, and then there's only mention of work that's about to be completed. There is no vision to speak of. Now we want Hong Kong to become a livable city where people could live and work happily. So we need to promote diversity of job opportunities, and there is also need to do more on social security. So there's room for major reforms. We need to provide a quality environment and give due recognition to the labour force. And there is something lacking in this policy address in this respect. Now, Hong Kong really lags behind the world in protecting workers. I watched a TV drama some time ago. In one episode, it says that one of the founders of the Chinese Communist Party gave a speech to workers. He said we should fight for 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and for the remaining 8 hours, that's time for us to do whatever we want. Now, 100 years ago, that's what Li Dachao said, and it's almost the same that I've been talking about all along. That is, we're fighting for 8 hours of work each day. Now, for workers in Hong Kong, when are we going to have standard working hours? Hong Kong workers work long hours and they're under immense pressure. And we have seen suspected cases of death from exhaustion from time to time. But then there is no legislation to give compensation to workers who die from exhaustion because of work. So I hope the government would enact legislation soon to regulate standard working hours. The government announced a freeze of the minimum standard minimum wage, so over 20 workers didn't get any wage increase. Now, standard minimum wage is actually the minimum protection for workers. So by freezing standard minimum wage is actually against the original intention of protecting workers. So I hope the government will come up with system that will review track changes in wages and the economy and so on. Now, many in the business sector always complain about labor shortage. They're not able to hire workers. It's true there is a mismatch between jobs and workers. So there are vacancies that can't be filled and there are workers who can't find work. But even so, we must not just casually import workers, because we have to ensure local workers have the first priority for job. That's the consensus of all sectors. So there are two things we can consider to resolve this matter. First, we should enhance education and promote diversity of career development. Secondly, we have to allow more people to join the workforce. In 2021, the labor force participation is just 51%, far lower than that in other places. For women, the participation rate is just 54%, which is even lower. And so I have suggested before that the Education Bureau could learn from the mainland experience. There should be comprehensive occasional or after-school care services for students, and then more women could then join the workforce, and that will help to increase the supply of manpower. Now, for civil service, I'm very much concerned about their working condition. Civil service morale is on the low side, as a fact. I hope the government will consider the work service and pay service condition and pay of newly recruited services to make sure they are aligned with those of existing civil servants. And also, there should be provision of health care after retirement for the newly recruited civil servants. Now, there are many issues of concern to the labor sector, but they are not mentioned touched upon at all in the policy address. That's why I say this is a policy address without any labor policy. But this is the last policy address for this term of the government. Well, I'll say, well, we'll just have to accept it. That's life. So I speak in support of the motion. Thank you. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I would like to talk about, improving people's livelihood. Now, there's a fund that says that there will just be 880,000 housing units to be completed in the near future. It could not meet the need of Hong Kong. And then we have to revamp our city planning, and we want to improve people's standard of living. That's one of the focus of the work of this government. So that's why the government is seizing upon the opportunity of the northern metropolis. It has to provide more housing land, and at the same time, we want to build a new smart metropolis with the innovation technology. So we can consider the this model of Twin Cities 3 circles with Shenzhen, so we could have more cooperation with Shenzhen. In fact, with the planning of the northern metropolis, we need the support of Shenzhen. We want to be integrated with national development. We must first integrate with Shenzhen, which has rapid development. Shenzhen is one of the leading cities in the whole scheme of national development. So we could take advantage of all the advantages of Shenzhen as well as the advantages of Hong Kong. These advantages could complement each other, and then we could promote the transformation of Hong Kong, and there will be new impetus. Now, the government should consider 1 hour living circle in GBA, and then there could be free flow of talents and so on. And then with innovation technology sector, we could seize upon all the available opportunities, and then we can promote the new era of collaboration on the I&T front with Shenzhen and other parts of the mainland. Now, there are still many obstacles. Mr. Yim, you have used up your speaking time. Please stop. Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Now, if young people, the country will only prosper if young people thrive. So I will speak on young people. I work with young people now. We need to help young people to address their issues, and they have to be able to see that's happening. Now, in the first policy address of this chief executive, she put forward various measures, policies to help young people with education, career, and housing, and also to help them take part in public affairs and so on. So the new Home and Youth Affairs Bill probably will have an even greater role in planning youth work. Now, this is the fifth policy address of this term of government, so let me sum up what the government has done with young people. Now, so far, there have been over 1,600 applications under the self-recommendation scheme for young people to take part in government work. That's an increase of actually the percentage has doubled. And then for education, recurrent expenditure has increased by 26%. So for young people at all levels could benefit from that. And now Chinese history will become a compulsory subject for junior secondary subject. And then liberal studies has been replaced by civic education as development. Now, if students attain 3322, starting from 17, 18, they will get subsidized higher education places. And then there's also the GBA employment scheme and other scheme to help to provide choices to young people on their career development. Now, housing, of course, is a challenge for everyone in Hong Kong, including young people. After 10 years of hard work, in 2020, the first youth hostel was created in Tai Po. Well, it's not exactly good progress, but at least we have the first youth hostel, and the government is working to provide more youth hostel places. Now, I would like to, after 5 years, I would like to propose to the government that the government should also help to promote the right sense of identity and other values on the part of young people. Now, first about life planning. Some 380,000 people benefited from a relevant life planning scheme, and then over 620 e-learning activities were carried out to promote healthy development of young people. And in the past 5 years, there are exchange programs covering many cities and provinces in the mainland and in other places as well. Now, young people say that every 3 years is a new generation. But then in the past 2 years, for all exchange activities have come to a halt. So I suggest that we seek the assistance of the Civil Service College. So for different groups, including young groups, national studies program could be developed for them so they could better learn about the development of the country and integrate into this development. Now, on the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, President Xi Jinping said that the future belongs to young people. I hope young people will not be absent from this development. Young people should work together and contribute their best to the development of the country. Thank you. Mr. Kenneth Kwok. Falk. Mr. Kenneth Falk. Mr. Falk, are you online? Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Madam Deputy, Chapter 6 of the policy address talk about sports development. So there's going to be professionalization and commercialization. But then for the original policies, they can't be taken forward alone. They have all the policies have to complement each other. So if we have the sports culture bureau, that would be a good thing, and tourism bureau, that would be a good start. Then we could tie in with the the country's development blueprint. If we want professionalization of sports and so on, we need to have new thinking. I have the following suggestions. First, you have to upgrade the professional qualifications of practitioners. There aren't many sports education programs, and for example, coaches. Most of that are at the level of qualifications framework, which is just equivalent to Form 7. So many people are worried about the future, and so they are discouraged from taking up such coach training programs. So we want to promote professional of sports. This is not the way to go. Therefore, we need to have high programs that fit in with the higher levels of the qualifications framework, and then we could promote the development of sports industry. Now, secondly, we need to have more support upstream and downstream in developing sports industry, because there are various professional services involved in the sports industry. For example, sports medicine, research, sports research, or even sports education, sports tourism, and so on. Now, there is not a proper eco chain for all these industries for now. For example, sports medicine is not included in the healthcare system. For example, physiotherapists and sports therapists, they don't have any official recognition or qualifications. But then if we are to promote sports industry, there will be a surge in demands for such services. So the government should come up with an accreditation system to include these services in the healthcare system. And also they provide upstream and downstream services, and the government should consider using a similar approach to build the full sports industry chain. Now, and we need to help the sports industry to go into the GBA market. We have a Sports for All program already, but then the country has this policy, Sports for All, and then we are part of the GBA, so we need to leverage on the GBA market. This is what will be an important stepping stone for the development of sports industry. Now, there are many bottleneck issues in terms of integrating with the mainland market. For example, there's no mutual recognition of professional qualifications in the sports industry. There has to be such a recognition, and then we could see more flourishing sports industry in GBA. And then we should, apart from developing sports resources, for the Kai-Tak sports ground, it should be given better support.
Now, the government should continue to do the following three things. First, to enhance media support to promote popularization and industrialization of sports. We need media participation. So the administration must provide more resources to make clear objectives for RTHK's support and publicity of sports. Now, water sports. Kai-Tak East or Kowloon East Water Sports Center can be used for promoting water sports in Hong Kong. We can consider hosting major water sports festival in Hong Kong on an annual basis and encourage overseas athletes to participate. I have put this proposal to the tourism board already. Now we understand that in the NT there is a cycling network, and people are asking how come we don't have any on Hong Kong Island. Now we are enhancing the waterfront of Hong Kong. The government can consider adding cycle tracks to our island harbourfront. Now, to ensure popularization, we must have a clear indicators for popular sports. So there should be more resources and teaching hours for sports in schools. And we can consider launching a sports consumption voucher. This will help to promote the industrialization of sports. I urge the administration to have a comprehensive plan to align with the country's sports policy. With these remarks, I support the motion. Mr. Vincent Zhang. Thank you, Madam Chair. I like to speak on building a livable city, improving the lives of our people. Now, the Secretary for Food and Health and also the Secretary for Labour and Welfare are here. We've all seen the situation of Characters Hospital recently because many elders are waiting in line. I hope the Secretary can speed up the process, and the Labour and Welfare Bureau has received complaints that recovered elderly patients are not allowed to go back to their RCHEs. I hope this can be seen to so that we can vacate beds for needy patients. Now, with the fifth outbreak of the epidemic, the impact on our economy is emerging. Although our unemployment rate has fallen from its peak of 7.3 to 3.8%, yet scheduled premises are still closed. Restaurants and cinemas and even travel agencies are closed. So we don't know when this wave of winding up will be over. Employees are forced to go, and I've received complaints that people are being sacked, and I think we should take care of people who are forced to take no pay leave, and their employers cannot do more. So can we give them some allowance? And because the economy is bad, the government should consider giving another round of 5,000 consumption voucher, or to pay a PRH rent for 1 month, and also electricity subsidy. That can make up for the rental increase of PRH introduced last year. So we should mobilize all resources to fight the epidemic and similar resources to help the grassroots face livelihood issues. The PA did mention poverty alleviation. It is said that the 2 levels of old age living allowance should be unified so that elders can have extra $1,000 in addition. Now, it was announced last year, but then we've yet to see it implemented. 2 years ago, the Labour and Welfare Bureau asked whether there can be any link with the unemployment allowance. I think under CCF we should reintroduce an allowance, cash allowance for people not living in PRH or not receiving a low-income subsidy or other forms of allowance. While we have a cash allowance for tenants of subdivided units, but that is hardly sufficient. And we should also improve the working families assistance. Now, the minimum hours of work should be lowered from 72 to 46 hours so that those who are unemployed can apply for the subsidy. Now, I'd like to turn to protection of children. Now, the children's home incident was overshadowed by the recent development of the epidemic. Now, 39 employees concerned are now arrested. I hope the administration will not shelve this issue in its fight against the epidemic. The administration should set up an independent inquiry committee. Otherwise, we will pursue this matter to the very end. Now, I'd like to turn to housing, people living in subdivided units in particular. Now, the rent control regulations for SDUs started operation this January. I'm so worried that landlords may be charging excessive utilities fees. So has there been any inspection to consider the effectiveness of the new legislation? We want some statistics from the administration. So we'd like to know the state of implementation of the new legislation. Now, previously, I set up a working group for saying goodbye to SDUs. I hope that for those living in SDUs, the 20,000, I'd like to know the 20,000 interim housing units, what are their progress? The construction site at Yam Chau Street has just started. I'd like to know whether you can deliver 20,000 interim housing units as scheduled. Is there room for you to increase that to 30,000? I hope that the THB can work harder and try to identify suitable sites for such purpose. Now I'd like to turn to sports and culture. Now, with the Winter Olympics, we can all see the performance of the national teams. And we have got 3 athletes representing Hong Kong. I actually really care for our sports policy, and I cannot agree more with Mr. Kenneth Fogg. There is plenty of room for improvement, whether we talk about popularization or elite sports or mega sports. Last year, I did a 2030 plus study on sports promotion, many of the recommendations of which were mentioned in the PA. I hope that in addition to the PA, there we can be given an update of the proposals, such as the 300 million booster fund, and also sports science, and how we can enhance the competitiveness of our athletes and subsidies for them, and industrialization of sports. I understand that a study will be completed within this year. Now, we are going to host the 15th All China Games soon. And in 2025, I hope we can be given an account. Another issue related to popular sports. Back then, there was $100 million scheme, but it seems not to be working for a small sports associations and district sports associations. They have been hard hit by the epidemic. They have suspended operation, and coaches are really in a plight. So the government should see how we can help them. And then under the Hong Kong Planning Standard Guidelines, we are still more than 1,000 venues short. The government should roll out a 5-year sports and recreational plan so that we can provide sufficient venues for the public to use. Now I'd like to turn to the environment. I'm the spokesperson on environmental affairs in DAB. I think it is important we provide a livable city. We should reduce waste, lower carbon emission, and improve recycling. The Environment Bureau has been working very hard. It has got new initiatives and has done a lot in the municipal solid waste charging. I hope that the Environment Bureau, in spite of the challenges, can implement its previous proposals and map out a blueprint for the future. Now, the dry weather interceptors are very useful for reducing the odor from some of the nullas, and now, like the To Kwang Wan Park and Hoyley Estate, can such devices be installed ASAP? I'm concerned about the provision of e-buses, double deckers in particular. I know that we have we're gradually using electric buses, and some cities are using hydrogen fuel cell e-buses. Your time is up, Mr. Vincent Zhang.
低榮議員。
Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chair. Now we really need a realistic welfare plan. Last year, the children's home incident created an uproar, and then it exposed many flaws and shortcomings in the whole system. Now, these organizations are not subject to any supervision. The frontline staff and also the management of the organization concerned did not really monitor the situation. The CCTV recordings were never reviewed, and the management of the organization never oversee the operation of the children's home. And then there is serious dereliction on the part of the SWD, because the SWD is responsible for licensing and funding. It has got a monitoring section. Its duty is to carry out surprise visits. Do you think the department has carried out its duties? Now, while the workers are professionals and also registered, but then they have to work on shift and their workload is heavy, the SWD has always been aware of these problems. But has SWD boosted the manpower? Is it the SWD is totally ignorant of the fact the children's home incident is just a child care abuse system? You may recall that in 2015, Untitled, the Cambridge Rehabilitation Home was involved in abuse of its elderly residents. Hong Kong is a very competitive economy. How come behind the glamour of this city, the conditions of our people is like in the third world? Our spending in social welfare is $157 billion, up 62%. It has overtaken education as the most expensive services or segment of society. Now, because we don't have proper planning, some social welfare services face a serious imbalance between supply and demand, and we need other services to fill in the gap. In other words, different types of services are intertwined. Whether we're talking about service capacities, venues, and manpower, they should be subject to regular review, and resources should be properly deployed. For instance, if the waiting time for RCHEs is too long, now this is a very frequent complaint we receive in the community, then we should have something to provide support at once. Unfortunately, the measures or the policies are being shared by different bureaus and departments, so the public suffer.
Madam Deputy, I hope the government can plan ahead before the crisis. I support the motion of thanks. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Chen Xiu-Hong. Thank you, President. I will briefly address the several points on environmental protection. First, I support the policy address. I support the general direction in terms of environmental protection, especially achieving the carbon neutrality targets and deal with climate change. The CE is chairing the steering committee on climate change and carbon neutrality broad strategy, and collaborate that will be charted out, and there will be collaboration between departments. GBA cities are working together to achieve the targets. Hong Kong should not fight this battle alone. I urge the governments to collaborate with the Guangdong provincial governments to take forward collaboration in terms of carbon neutrality and climate change measures to achieve synergy. Third, the government should involve different sectors in the community, especially young people, to join in. To achieve, we have to achieve the carbon neutrality targets by year 2050 and stop registration for new diesel or carbon-emitting vehicles by year 2030. The government should speed up the plan to introduce electric cars. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Frankie Yik. President, in this session, I will express my views in terms of transport. The Liberal Party supports giving priority to transport infrastructure. The proposed expansion plan for the 5 railways will connect the east and west of New Territories. However, currently the transport network in New Territories East is already at full capacity. Residents there are caught in traffic jam. So under the principle of giving priority to transport infrastructure, the government should implement first construction projects of new railways and transport network to alleviate the pressure in New Territories East. Now, Hong Kong has a limited land, and it is understandable to use a railway as our backbone. However, we have to be mindful of the development of other public transport means to maintain an ecosystem. 90% of commuters are using public transport. However, MTR accounts for 40%. Contractors and providers of public transport services are facing issues like rising costs and higher wages. Now, the government is not doing its best to clamp down on unlicensed provision of transport services. Now, there will be a strategic study on provision of public transport. However, the study will only be completed by year 2050. In the interim, the government has to provide short-term measures to alleviate the cost pressure as well as the shortage of labor for the public transport services sector. Now, the government plans to implement a congestion charge to change the habits of commuters, to discourage drivers from using busy road sections during peak hours. If more people opt for public transport, it will certainly help create synergy with the plan. So I think we have to waive the congestion fee for public transport. Now, recently, the third-party insurance fee for buses and taxis have been driven up tremendously. That's because of the increase in number of application for claims. Now, besides clamping down on charity and maintenance, it is really important to clamp down on unlicensed vehicle services. Well, most of the traffic accidents are caused by human error. So I support the injection of $1 billion into the fund to improve road safety with innovation technology. I hope the sectors will make good use of the fund and install advanced technology, for example, anti-collision devices to enhance the road safety. Now, road vehicles accounts for 18% of our total carbon emission. That's why the government has been promoting popularization of EV. The Liberal Party is in support of that. In terms of electric taxis and buses and minibuses, these vehicles are in operation for a long time, and we need charging facilities. It is difficult to install charging facilities in the urban area, so this is the major challenge. So besides the promotion of EVs, the government should also promote the trial use of other new energy vehicles, for example, hydrogen fuel. The government should work with the bus companies and help them to introduce hydrogen-fueled buses. Reduction of carbon emission is the trend. Ocean-going vessels are shifting to cleaner energy, for example, liquefied natural gas. The 2 offshore terminal to refuel LNG will be completed this year. Now, Hong Kong can become a refueling station of ships in the region. However, the government can only roll out can only legislate for these measures in a few years' time. Well, I think it will be too late. In Singapore and Rotterdam, they are providing refueling services of LNG. The government should legislate so that we can maintain our position as the as the top 5 refueling station of the world and maintain our status as a regional maritime hub. Thank you. I support the motion. Mr. Kwok Wai-Keung. I will speak on labor welfare. Now, Hong Kong has a wide wealth gap. The Gini coefficient is 0.39. It is among the top 10 of the world. The highest earner accounts for 40% of our income. The lowest income family accounts only for 0.6% of the economy. Now, the minimum wage is not efficient in helping the low-income families. Now, for those earning an hourly rate lower than 37.5%, they only account for 0.7% of the total labor force. The starting minimum wage was too low. Now, every 2 years, the minimum wage will be adjusted according to the deferred figure. These people cannot even catch up with the inflation. Now, in year 2020, the wage was frozen at $37.5 per hour. During 4 years' time, there was no wage increase, and these low-income earners are living in a place where things are expensive. So how can they survive? The FTU does not support freezing the minimum wage in year 2021. We have to review the low starting minimum wage. We should raise the minimum wage to $43.5. And also we should have a review every year so that the increase of wage can catch up with inflation. Only then can the low-income earners share the fruits of the economy. Thank you. Mr. Peter Shiu. Thank you, President. The policy address has put forward a lot of visions for the development of Hong Kong. In the previous segments, we have discussed upon improving governance, integrating with the national developments and the northern metropolis, increasing housing, and so on. In this section, the government also mentioned a continuous link in improving people's livelihood by nurturing talents, enhancing mobility, and so on. The Liberal Party is in support of this. According to paragraph 120, the recurrent expenditure on welfare has been increased to from $65.3 billion in year 2017 to $105.7 billion this year, an increase of 62%. Maternity leave has increased to 14 weeks, and the statutory holidays have been increased to 17 days. These are all the measures the government have implemented to improve labor welfare. Now, of course, we support these measures which improve livelihood of people. Besides employees, we also have employers. To strike a balance between the welfare of employers and employees, the government has to be very careful. Many members mentioned about yearly review of minimum wage and standard working hours. President, during the debate, I've only spoken during the first session. I am saving my time for this session because I know Dr. Law will only appear in this session. Now, I would like to tell Dr. Law, if you are abolishing the offsetting mechanism of the MPF system, is it appropriate? You proposed this item for discussion on the 4th day of the Chinese New Year holiday. Many people haven't begun working yet. We all wonder why the government is rushing to roll out these measures amidst the serious epidemic and the bad economies. If you are doing a revamp of the system, it will certainly cause tension between employers and employees. Secretary, when you implement the system, many people will try to get themselves fired. And then the Labor Bureau will will be even busier. Well, actually, we all want our business to thrive. This is really a bad time to abolish the offsetting mechanism of the MPF system. Many people are wondering why you are doing this at this moment. So please reconsider it. President Xi, his latest direction is to give top priority to containing the epidemic. It means that we have to put everything aside and unite our efforts to overcome the epidemic, and then we can move on to other topics. Now we are going to enter March. This time of the government will end by the 30th of June. The details of the abolition plan is still unsure. Some think that they only have to pay $3,000. Some think that they only have to make 1% contribution. Well, these are all false. If employers are unable to pay 1%, then in 5 years' time, they will have to pay half of the contribution. Many people don't understand this. And like I said, after the abolition of the offsetting mechanism, the employer-employee relations will be very tense. If employees choose to resign on their own, the benefits will not be given. I mean, the long service payment. If the employees are fired, then the employers do not have to make the contribution. So there are lots of issues. That's why I've always said that with the implementation of the abolition scheme, many people will try to get themselves fired. There are people who have worked for a company for 20 to 30 years. The employer will try to give the employees a hard time and make them leave on their own. So you really have to reconsider the abolition mechanism. You should defer the scheme, and then let us focus on handling the epidemic. Thank you. Mr. Lee Chen-keung. Thank you, President. I would like to address the points about INT and nurturing talents. Many people think that blue collars do not give us a bright future. Now we are entering the era of industrialization 4.0. Blue collars can certainly have a bright future. We have the country as our backup to support us. With the 1.4 billion population, there is a very large market. Hong Kong is going to join the Dual Circulation and National Development Plan. There are lots of opportunities. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, Hong Kong should develop itself into an international INT center and integrate with the GBA developments. I and the Liberal Party are pleased to learn that the government is going to rename the INT Bureau to the IT and Industry Bureau. The government will chart out a comprehensive reindustrialization blueprint and a blueprint for industrialization 4.0. There are really a lot of opportunities. Our universities are of a high quality. We have high quality students, and it has very good international connection. Still, we lack the advanced institutions to teach, to nurture INT talents, and there is no connection between scientific research and the commercialization of products.
So I believe the new bureau should, bring together the organizations in the sectors, higher institutes, and also for those locally and from other parts of from outside Hong Kong. Then we could try to work together to commercialize R&D products. And then there should also be, internationalization of R&D information, and then we could formulate a policy on a new technology promotion. And then we should also learn from the experience on the mainland and in Germany. They have a high technology plan. That's the the way to promote our reindustrialization 4.0. That is, we have to go for digitization and so on. It's not just about new industrial technology, but rather it's about making sure we have smart factories, and then in the whole product chain there has to be comprehensive after-sales service. Now, when we talk about innovation, technology, talents, of course, are important. According to the Labour and Welfare Bureau, there will be a 4.3% annual increase in demands for INT talents. So this is a sector with the highest manpower growth. But then last year, there was a study that shows that among 13 major cities, Hong Kong is ranked 12 in terms of supply of talent. So it shows there is a serious shortage of INT talents. It's worrying. That's why I and the Liberal Party believe that we need to come up with a plan to nurture talents and also to bring in talents. We should relax the quota for importing talents. There should be various package to attract them to come to Hong Kong, and then there have to be various support schemes. For example, INT Sustainable Development Fund, and there has to be one-stop service too. And then we need to remove all the bureaucracy, so more INT talents will want to come to live and work in Hong Kong. Now we need to have a new mindset. Of course, we need to consider education in nurturing INT talents. But then for local education curriculum, is not useful in nurturing INT talents. That's why in primary and secondary schools there have to be new subjects on creative thinking and design, and then we should nurture our new generation into INT talents. In the long run, as I said at the beginning, we have to think out, remove this bias that blue collars don't have a bright future. So for grammar schools and vocational schools, there should be better options for young people to choose between the two streams of education. And then there should be revamp of the senior secondary curriculum, and then people could make their life planning earlier. Now we have a severe fifth wave of epidemic. President Xi Jinping made some important instructions, and that helps to give a boost to our effort in fighting the epidemic. People are seeing hope again. I believe if all civil servants, the healthcare workers, and the public in general will work together to fight the epidemic, and we should all give our full support to the SL government in fighting this epidemic, and then we can emerge from it very soon. So these remarks I speak in support of the motion of thanks. Mr. MNU. Thank you. The epidemic is severe now. The chief executive is announcing tightened social distancing measures increasingly, and so restaurants and cinemas are closing. We are in dire strait. Many have asked when this wave of epidemic will end and how many people will lose their jobs in this wave of epidemic. Finally, the SL government has taken on board our suggestion for a temporary unemployment assistance scheme. So there will be $3 billion to give $10,000 of subsidy to each applicant. But many wonder when they could receive the money. Now the government plans to start receiving application in March, and then in April, the first batch of applicants will be given the subsidy. But then we are talking about a huge number of applications, and we're worried if the government could really keep up with this target in dispersing this emergency assistance. Now we have had meetings with different sectors, for example, the taxi trade. Last time with the subsidy scheme, there were over 10,000 taxi drivers or owners who waited over half a year to receive the subsidy. Now, we expect over 300,000 people will apply for this temporary unemployment assistance. If that's the rate the government goes in processing applications, we worry when all the applications will be processed. The AB would also suggest that the SL government consider, apart from providing MPF contribution proof, the public could also sign a declaration that they are unemployed, and then they could submit the information later. Now, of course, the government is concerned about abuse, but because there are criminal liabilities, I believe that would deter abuses to a large extent, if not altogether. Because already there would be, abuse with the Working Family Living Assistance Scheme too, because the scheme is working fine, so the government could learn from that experience. In any case, $10,000 of temporary unemployment assistance is a one-off measure. How long could it help those who are without jobs? At the Manpower panel meeting last week, I asked the same question. The secretary would always say that would always hide behind the offsetting arrangement of under MPF, but the MPF is about retirement protection. It's something about the future. But then people have no jobs now. They have no income. They can't feed the family and themselves. That is a pressing issue. So the DB believes that the government should put together a standing unemployment assistance scheme for workers. They shouldn't just take stopgap measures. Now, in the past 2 years, many businesses have closed, and so many people become casual workers, say working in the food delivery trade and so on. And that has actually helped to promote the 0 hours contract system. But then with the 0 hours contract system, it doesn't really meet the requirement of 814, and so so therefore workers could be exploited, and they don't get the basic workers protection. And there are many labor disputes in past years, and you have seen many cases of strikes by food deliverers. And it's not a unique situation in Hong Kong. On the mainland or in other countries, we're seeing a booming 0 hours worker trade. And so measures need to be taken. For example, in Nanjing last year, they started trying some new measures. They asked businesses to pay for social protection contributions for their food deliverers. And then in California, in the United States, they've also brought in some sort of a vetting system, and they've also formulated new labor legislation to give protection to workers. I hope the government will move with the times, and you will review this continuous contract provision. There should be protection for 0 hours worker. I understand that the Census and Statistics Department does not currently collect data on 0 hour workers. So you have to do surveys or to find out about the characteristics of this group of workers, and then you could formulate policies accordingly to offer protection to these gig workers. So I speak. Thank you. Ms. Lillian Kwok. On nurturing talents and youth development, I would like to look at these issues from the education angle. Now, education is every student is entitled to education. So from statistics, we know that in 2020, there are some 58,000 SEN students, an increase of 40% compared to 2015. Many organizations pointed out that in Hong Kong we don't have integrated education. and there's not enough policy support in terms of a school-based support and manpower. There is a shortfall. I hope the government will review that. Now we have an epidemic, and a family may have a moderately mentally handicapped student. The father has stroke, and then the mother eventually killed herself because of the pressure. We all knew about the case. Now, there are SENs who are stuck at home because of the epidemic, and they may have various emotional issues. So I would suggest that schools have to bring in counselors and give support to students with emotional problems. And then for young people, there are many students and parents believe that going to university is the only way out for their future. 80% of students many students think that vocational education is inferior to university education, so they end up some young people end up not getting any education at all. So the government should promote further the vocational education. They can learn from the experience overseas where there is a dual system. You can encourage businesses to work with you so that students could complete their training and internship at businesses. And then young people will come to accept more of vocational education. Now, Hong Kong is an international city, and we are far behind in the application of information technology. The government should make better use of information technology. The government has a database. It should use artificial intelligence to learn more about the learning situation of students. On the mainland, they have a well-developed system. The government could learn from that. Now, in Hong Kong, our education system is not moving with the times. There are many education policies that need to be reviewed so that we could truly have quality education, and then children could learn happily and develop happily. Thank you. Dr. Priscilla Leung. President, when we had the Black Cat riots in 2019, the central authorities were forced to perform two surgeries in Hong Kong. One is improving the electoral system. The other is the promulgation of the national security law. Now matters are back in our hands. It's for the SAR to make sure there is good governance. If we want to achieve good governance, and we want to, it's important, first of all, that we gain public recognition, and there are both hardware and software involved. Now, in 2014 and 2019, we've seen serious social rift. People are aggrieved, and many young people were misled to hate their countries under distorted education. Now, with the epidemic, we see, when there are adversities, there are opportunities. Adversity is that there are much public grievances. The opportunities are many prepared to lend a hand, and also many are prepared to lend the venues for government use, but we need the government to take the lead. So I am more in support of reorganizations of government structure, but the problem rests with people. When we're trying to save lives, the legal system and AI systems should not stand in the way. But then, do we have a closed mindset? I hope the Civil Service College will train our civil servants to have a better, broader outlook, and they have to connect with the people. And civil servants have to visit districts like they visit family members, and they must also stand at the forefront in serving the public.
We cannot just send civil servants to top-notch universities in Tsinghua and Beijing universities. They should also be sent to remote villages to see how the country has done in alleviation of poverty. And middle-ranking civil servants should also be sent to different parts of the country. And it's also an opportunity for talents outside the civil service to join the government so that there can be more flexible mindset within the government. Our civil service has got a lot of advantages. For instance, we have a clean civil service. They have every respect for the rule of law and also systems. Yes, we should maintain this, but we should change their attitude and mindset. They have to face changes in the new era. They should not be bound by systems in resolving problems of the community. For instance, people say that it's hard to tackle the youth problem. Now, on the 11th of November 2019, all universities had class boycott. Myself and also universities lecturers completed a 3-hour course on lecture on basic law and constitution in City University. We would not let black clot violence to affect us. Yes, many young people were radical, but if we approach them with sincerity and honesty, well, some young people told me that they were willing to work with us and must not let the black clot rioters to disturb our lessons. We must teach our young people not to be hostile to the countries. They should take pride in being Chinese. I think for the SDU problem, we lack any statistics and blueprint, and the system keeps telling us that this cannot be done, that cannot be done. Now, have they ever thought of turning something infeasible into feasible? Now, this is the mindset, and I think we need the key to this lock. And many of our civil servants are very outstanding. Now, if they look towards the country and to the world, I'm sure they can achieve a lot. Many of us would like to integrate into the development of the country, whether we talk about the accountancy, legal, and insurance sectors. And for the financial services sector, they want to have fintech. They want to be able to be the first movers. We should ensure that our products can benefit from fintech, and we should hold on to our position as an international financial center, and we should keep our low and simple taxation system. And most important of all, we need to attract and retain talents, and we must retain their minds. And then we face huge expenses in housing and social welfare. So in addition to spending money, we should think of how we can make money, because by 2030, we will have a very much aged society. Have we considered using our future fund? Now we have the Lantau Tomorrow Vision and also the Northern Metropolis. How can we issue bonds using these big projects so that we can make money? The government must learn to spend money as much as making money. And if our civil service can remove these constraints and red tapes, I'm sure we can grasp the opportunities brought about by GBA and Belt and Road Initiative. I'm sure there will be reunification in minds with our main authorities, and I'm sure we will even be a more glamorous pearl and treasure of the country. Thank you. Professor Lau Shipeng, sorry, the timer is not on. All right, I'd like to speak on culture and sports. The country supports Hong Kong to become an exchange hub of Western and Eastern cultures. I think this is a very important role cut out for Hong Kong. In terms of hardware, we have invested a lot in arts and culture. The WKCD and the National Palace Museum are good examples. However, to discharge our duties, we must catch up from the software aspect. Now, when it comes to Chinese culture, I don't think we have really placed enough emphasis on that. We are always called a place where the East meets West. People may think that we have the Chinese culture, deeply embedded in Hong Kong, but that is not really the case. The government has not taken sufficient measures to resolve this problem. Only very few secondary students take Chinese history. Many people don't even know where their hometown was, and we must base ourselves on the local culture. I urge the administration to take immediate action to enhance students' understanding and learning of Chinese culture, and there should be a high-level advisory committee to pool the wisdom of experts and scholars. And the Future Tourism, Arts and Sports Bureau should play an active role in this regard. With this remark, I support the motion. May I appeal to members, for those who intend to speak in this session, please use the raise hands feature of Zoom as soon as possible. Mr. Pawsey, thank you. Now because things keep evolving, I've adopted a dynamic speaking approach. The policy address was delivered on the 6th of October last year. I would call it outdated already. In strict terms, strictly speaking, it should be rewritten because things have changed drastically. First, the epidemic, as we all know, as said by the CS4A, we are now in a warlike state. So the morale of the community is most important. Instead of debating the policy address, we should focus on the epidemic. We see many elderly persons waiting outdoors at hospitals to be treated. We really like it in the third world. The urgent task for us is now we have to thank the presidency. I think we may have even to defer the CE election. Now, since the boat is sinking and water is coming in, we shouldn't be discussing where we go for a vacation. So, I think that there is the imminent Ukraine and Russia war, and the relations between the U.S. and China have worsened. Mr. Potter, yes, please go on. I think what we propose to do here may be counterproductive. And we also face this problem of brain drain and immigration. I hope what I say will not negate valuable suggestions in the policy address. But since many members have been making high-sounding comments, perhaps I should be more down to earth. Now, this is a convention of this council that people may not support the motion. In fact, this is just a platform for us to debate on various issues of the policy address. It's like a Queen's speech, and I think it's not a question of whether we pass or thank the motion or not. I think it's meaningless for officials to go and secure enough votes for the motion to be passed. In fact, it's just a platform for us to debate on various issues. The policy address has got 56 pages, of rather 54 pages. There is also a supplemental document to the policy address with a thick bundle to tell us the progress of previous initiatives, and that 96% of previous initiatives have been successfully implemented. Well, of course, we want to retain our fine tradition under one country, two systems. We might want to have something like the Queen's speech, but at the same time, we are also talking about a blueprint for Hong Kong in the coming 5 years. So we can take it in whatever way we like. Some may say that the proposed reorganization of government structure has nothing to do with the current CE. In fact, I'm sure with the central authorities' blessing and support of this council, I think the government reorganization proposals can be implemented in the next term of government. Now, the epidemic is really serious. We call it war. I think the most important thing is our morale. Although I noticed that there have been some improvements. RTHK Channel 32 has started to give out speedy and instant information related to the fight against the epidemic. That's a good thing because the flow of information is problematic at times. Now, most people have smartphones nowadays. Can't we ask the telecom companies to disseminate accurate and speedy information to members of the public? I'm sure the cost would only be limited. That can help members of the public to have immediate information in relation to restriction and declaration order, for instance. And I think the content of the press release is also important. We used to have a lot of information about the confirmed cases and the tracking information, but now it is no longer important. Nowadays, what we need is the daily trend. For instance, groups that are particularly affected, clusters, and also new restriction and testing orders at different places in town, and also the definition of social distancing measures and implementation details. I think it's important that we elaborate on these things. And in Hong Kong, we should give up on empty slogans. Whether we call it zero infection policy or not, that doesn't matter. Rather, we should help the public to interpret the figures, how serious we are in. And we should also pacify our community. We had some confusing information in the past, and people were scared. Now, in the past, people thought that death may result in an infection. Things are different. We should explain to the public the risks involved under the new state of the epidemic and how people deal with their symptoms to allay the concerns of people waiting to be treated. And this is very important. So this is about their morale.
So we should give out more instructions. I believe many doctors would agree that under these circumstances, panic or anxiety would cause illnesses. Some people might be anxious about getting ill, so it is unhealthy. So maybe we should place more attention. Now about the standards and criteria. When should quarantine start and when should people be subject to compulsory quarantine measures? There are new standards. The government should give clear explanation when you should get tested, when you will be quarantined, and what is the consequence. Well, I think the number of close contacts or household members of close contacts have reached has reached tens of thousands of people. What about admission to hospital and home isolation, makeshift hospitals and makeshift quarantine centers, and ICU and so on? There should be clearer explanations. Now there is a new medicine. I hope we can have this oral medicine soon, and the next generation vaccines. Will the delivery arrive in May or June? Now, can we get more vaccines since the Western countries are giving up? And what about Chinese medicines? Now, the government experts often offer conflicting opinions and advice that they have different positions. There should be a unified position. We cannot control private opinions, but these are government experts we are talking about. They should only say what should be said. Otherwise, it will only create chaos. At present, we don't have any declaration of interest mechanism. Comments may come with consequences. We have to require declaration of interest if these so-called experts are giving opinions. Well, we cannot stop them, but at least we can understand where they are coming from. Now, time is running short. About well, if Hong Kong is a ship, before sailing forward, we have to plug the holes on the ship. Now, the biggest hole is the pandemic. It is gradually being put under control. There are other holes to be filled. Well, like I said, many people are not listening to the government. We have a wave of emigration. There are people leaving Hong Kong, bringing capitals, and corporations are leaving. Everything is leaving. Well, I can't give you the exact figures because of the time. You can refer to the statistics. The age of people leaving and professionals are leaving and so on. It is said that over 70% of the people who left are highly educated. But we may have a new wave of talents coming from the north. However, we have professions affected by this brain drain. Now, in terms of corporation leaving, we have a Caribbean and Oriental. These corporations have left Hong Kong. They said they would not choose Hong Kong as the regional hub anymore. Now, about exodus of capitals, immigrants are taking away money and capitals from Hong Kong. I don't have the figures, but it seems that the amount is some $280 billion. And because of the anti-epidemic, our reserve has plunged from $1.2 trillion to only $800 billion. Well, it is a cause for concern. So maybe many things said in the policy address is no longer pertinent at this moment. Now, about the morale of people. Of course, the national policy is for Hong Kong to continue to be the international financial center. However, if we cannot contain COVID, then we cannot serve these roles. Now, morale is very important. If we don't make sure that there is a high morale of the people, well, I think the country's efforts to support and help Hong Kong will be in vain. So I think we have neglected this front, especially during this trying time. We have to pay attention to this. Now we have the patriots administering a patriotic team administering Hong Kong. Still, there are differences in terms of politics, especially medical workers and social workers, and some people who were district councillors. We have to focus our resources to deal with the pandemic. So public sentiment is very important. Now, in terms of the constitutional, in terms of our political system, Now, in October last year, there was a white paper about the democracy with a Chinese characteristic and a Hong Kong characteristic. So we have to do a better job in terms of political reform, especially about the chief executive election and universal suffrage. We cannot forget all these. Now, the one country, two systems principle is a huge achievement in the centenary of the Chinese Communist Party. We should serve as an example in terms of financial center as well as politically. We are really a laboratory, a testing field of the country. We should be a showcase of how we can achieve steadfast and long-term stability. So we cannot neglect our role in terms of an example. We are enjoying a prime status given to us by the country. Thank you, President. Thank you, President. The target of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 is our vision. The three major carbon emission sources are electricity generation, transport, and waste. In terms of shifting to new energy, it is the key. Now, in the year 2020 electricity production mix, compared with previous years, we have had a major improvement. Previously, the major part of fuel is coal fuel. Now, in year 2020, natural gas accounts for 48%. For coal fuel, it has reduced to 24%. The remaining fuel mix is non-fossil fuel. Now, to achieve carbon emission, we have to shift away from fossil fuel. However, because of our geographical constraints, we have limited potential for new energy. That's what the government said. It seems that the government is not considering the idea of a cross-boundary collaboration. Regional collaboration is very important for achieving the long-term goal. However, if that is the case, it seems that we are shifting the responsibility to the mainland counterparts. That's not desirable. And also, there will be a lot of challenges in regional collaboration in terms of technology constraints. Now, the country is also moving towards carbon neutrality. It is expected that the demand for non-coal, non-fossil fuel will be heightened. We will face competition in terms of procuring non-fossil fuel, driving up the supply cost. So I urge the Environment Bureau to focus on local new energy production. Offshore wind farms should be built, and also we should improve the tariff sharing scheme. We should also enhance the application and development of a green hydrogen fuel. We should only consider regional collaboration after considering in length how we can develop new energy in Hong Kong. Now, on reduction of waste at source. Previously, the government has committed a lot of funds into building waste-to-energy facilities as well as MSW charging. The responsibility scheme, a charging scheme for plastic beverage containers, that is something applaudable. However, there will be a lot of implementation and execution obstacles. For example, fly tipping of waste. Now, under the Basel Convention, plastic waste trade between countries is forbidden. Now, the government should enhance our capacity to transform plastic to recycle plastic. Otherwise, there will be it will be filling up our landfill. Now, the national's decision is a major move to support the Paris Agreement. Now, the government should support the government's mission and achieve carbon neutrality for Hong Kong. Thank you. I so submit. President, since the first wave, grassroots families in Hong Kong had family incomes drastically cut because of the epidemic. Many people have become part-time workers or even unemployed. Well, there are abundant examples of these. In the past 2 years, the most affected families are single parents family. If the financial pillar lose her job, then the entire family will be under pressure. Now, a lot of families are living below the poverty line. I myself grew up in a single parent family. I am well aware of the difficulties faced by these families. I have a lot of care for this group of people. However, in the policy address, there is not much mentioning about support for single parents family. I suggest the government giving more care and support to this group of people. First, for single parent family, financial support should be provided. And we should develop a community childcare services and encourage employers to hire full-time or part-time single parents to help them, so that besides work, the single parents can still have energy to take care of the family. Now, because of the increase in number of single parents family, the community should be more understanding and caring for these families. For example, schools can extend opening hours so that for single parents who need to work, they can come pick up the children later. Now, under the suspension of schools, single parents families are hugely affected. If there is no support measures, single parents will have no choice but quit their job and stay at home. Now, in terms of alimony and so on, the suggestions are not being taken up by the government. The HAB has engaged in university to engage in a study about single parents family. The report is still not completed. If that's the case, then the entire issue will be left untouched for 10 years. We cannot ignore the problems caused by single parent families, including education, employment, as well as other social issues. We often hear in the news for youth offender cases, we often hear mitigation like the offenders grew up in single parents families, my mother doesn't have time for me, and so on. These are all the lurking problems caused by single parents family. After the resumption, after the epidemic, it will take a lot of time for our economy to rebuild. But that time, the problems will surface, especially employment issue. So the government should think ahead and provide more job opportunities for single parents to ensure that they can feed their families and ensure stability for children in single parents families, enjoy education and a healthy upbringing. And also the government should take the lead to offer family-friendly measures and offer care and help to single parents families. I support Ms. Starry Lee's motion. However, with a heavy heart, I have to say that in the past 2 years, the epidemic has dealt a huge blow to the people. Now, we have the 2021 policy address, but what's more important are the implementation details and the plans ahead. So in the coming few months and for the remaining year, the government has to seriously consider our suggestions and take forward the measures. I wish that in this new year, the government can be a government which is really in touch with people's needs. Thank you.
Mr. Sunny Tan. Mr. Sunny Tan, you have not unmuted your phone yet, your speaker yet. Thank you. Now, I think the most pressing issue in terms of livelihood issues is the epidemic. The President Xi Jinping has sent us some has made important instructions to show his concern about us. He said that the fighting the epidemic should be a top priority. That's why mainland experts have arrived in Hong Kong, and they have given us a boost in our confidence in fighting the epidemic. I'm very much grateful to the central authorities for their concern and selfless caring for Hong Kong. As President Xi Jinping pointed out, the SL government has to take the assumed top responsibility, the main responsibility in fighting epidemic. I hope we could then try to mobilize all the necessary resources and take all necessary steps to fight this. And then different sectors could also play their role. For example, the textile and garment trade has been helping to supply materials for making masks and so on. And then the hospital authority has to make sure they have sufficient manpower and equipment to take care of our patients. With the support of the central government, all sectors must work together, and surely we shall prevail over the epidemic. Thank you. Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, President. Now, Smart City is covered in this debate session. Smart City includes a smart government, but in the fifth wave of the epidemic, the people can see that the government is not really smart enough in many of its work tasks. For example, tracing close contacts, dissemination of information, and work from home arrangement for civil servants. Of course, I know that we fighting the epidemic should take top priority, but it doesn't mean that all government departments have to come to a stop, and even for public-private collaboration that's come to a stop. Now, the government has announced a work-from-home arrangement for civil servants, but the private sector sees that the government actually stopped work altogether. Many applications not processed, or they processed much more slowly. Now, some citizens say that they've been issued with notebook computers so they could work from home, but then many of the documents are still paper-based. They are not uploaded to the government department server. So I hope there will be improvement in this respect. So with this, so I speak. The meeting will be suspended for 10 minutes, and the public officers will speak when the council resumes.